Today I have for you, oh, it doesn't even say on the bag, but Five Guys burger and fries. So, the total for this meal, I got the veggie burger and a small mini fry. I'm going to the gym after this, isn't that appropriate? French fries are vegan. I think I'm gonna eat French fries every day. Okay.
Poop crumbs.
Yes, I'm claiming fair use on this video. I'm borrowing from a lot of clips to broaden the story with people that say it better than I do. And, you know, the burning question is, of course, are carbs addictive? Well, with those first clips that I borrowed from the KDW channel, very creative person, we're looking at a train wreck here, and Katie did a good job at it. I don't even recommend looking at her video if you're faint-hearted, because it's really depraved, in my opinion. When you completely let yourself go and go in public and mukbang, it's called gluttony. So this is a no-brainer that this is a problem with some people. The biggest tragedy about this gal who way overeats is that recently she had to have surgery for PCOS, and she had a ovarian cyst as big as a baby removed, and she had to have a hysterectomy. So this kind of behavior can really destroy one's health. And you could look through my videos. I do have a video on insulin resistance and PCOS, you know, if you want more information on that. But my main goal today is to look at people really legitimately struggling.
I would wake up and use food as a way to feel happy, like it was my purpose in life, it's just eating. And I see this from almost every vegan on YouTube, to Facebook groups, to vegans I knew in real life or have seen in real life. Their life revolves around food, and if they do anything else, you know, whatever else they do is just a small part of their lives compared to the vast majority of time thinking about food, dreaming about food and craving it. It just takes up all of your time. You know, you think about all that glucose going up so high and then falling down. You know, you have to eat frequently, and all of you know, obviously vegans do this. Whenever we were vegans, you ex-vegans watching, you remember how we ate all that freaking food all the time. Do you guys remember a group called, a Facebook group called What Fat Vegans Eat? Yeah, it's a group. And I remember I would see her scroll through the photos and show me pictures of the food, and every time she would find something, every time she would scroll on that page, she'd find a recipe and immediately get up and cook it. And she was always hungry, especially when she went on that page. And I remember one night she took flour, I guess it was flour, water, oil, and sugar. And she just basically made this half-assed vegan donut and dunked it in hot oil, like she fried it and then just ate it straight out of the pot. And she's the type of person who also would eat frosting from the container with a spoon And I remember one time I made cake and it didn't come out well, and she's like, "Oh, that's all right. We could just eat the frosting." I actually got upset. I was like, "Well, I spent $7 on that frosting to make a really nice cake, so I'm going to save the frosting." And she was just like, "Can I at least take 3 or 4 spoonfuls and eat it before you say?"
Yes, in a certain sense, I'm singling out the vegan diet, but it sure does not eliminate the standard diet, American diet, and it's, spreading worldwide with diabetes and that. But I'm singling out the vegan diet in a way because they rely heavily on legumes to get what protein they can, and legumes are loaded with carbs, and plus they're set up for malnutrition, to get heme iron and B12, for example, both essential for good health.
I'm telling you, if you start eating meat, you're not going to focus on food that often anymore unless you eat a lot of carbs again. But I feel like the meat will balance you out and you won't be obsessed with constantly eating. And if you are listening to anyone like Freely has not proved that she is a nutritionist, and if you listen to her, you will surely get sick. You are not supposed to be a fruitarian. We are not frugivores.
I just got a DM on Instagram. Someone told me to look at FullyRawKristina stories, and they sent me a screenshot and had to go and take a screenshot. This is happening to vegans, not just raw vegans, but actual normal potato eating, legume eating vegans. They're also getting the same thing happening to them. And the vegans will say makeup. I don't think they understand how makeup works. Look at her forehead. Look at how low her hairline was, and now it's going up. Oh, she got older. She got 6 years older. 6 years is not supposed to change you like this.
Went to college and put on 30 pounds my freshman year, right? When I was growing up, my mom baked homemade bread every day, fresh baked desserts that we used to make all the time. And there wasn't really any junk food. I remember it was a really big deal that once a year on our birthday, we got to pick out a box of sugar cereal. So when I went to college and realized I could buy whatever I wanted, I started eating sugar cereal every day. I had fast food really accessible for the first time, and then spent the next really 5 years going up and down that same 30-40 pounds. I probably hit 200 pounds for the first time right around my freshman year of college. And so I tried a vegan diet for a while. I was eating vegetables and tons of sprouted oats and quinoa, every kind of vegetable, spinach smoothies, and chia seeds and hemp hearts and all that kind of stuff. And really by the end of that year, was extremely unhealthy. I lost 50 pounds. At that point, though, cutting out fast food really would have resulted in weight loss. But I also had a lot of issues with acne, with energy, endurance. My hair started falling out everywhere. And really, by the end of that, I was dealing with some severe malnutrition. My teeth were having a lot of issues as well, and I was kind of starting to rapidly develop a large amount of cavities and gum disease. Gained another 40 pounds back. Got pregnant with my son, and really just decided I was gonna, be pregnant and eat whatever, and got up to 250 pounds at that point. After I had my son, I just really never got into the groove of trying to lose weight again. And it took me a couple years of that same, I would be on a diet for a couple weeks and then be off for a couple months and back and forth, and really could never stick to anything. I was in this constant state of, I would start a diet on Monday, and by Wednesday I had already messed up. I would just get a little more determined to stick with it. And I knew in January I had been strict for the whole month and had lost like 25 pounds, but I had gained it all back between the end of January and March. I'm really good at losing quickly and then turning around and gaining it all. So March came. Keto was a big deal. March of 2018, so I started keto, tracking macros, did the whole thing, learned out about intermittent fasting through that. So by the time we hit to April, I was down to 2 meals a day, snacking, still tracking a little, so worried about my keto macros and hitting my fat macros that my protein was very low and my hair started falling out. So I was doing all this fasting, but I was really protein deprived.
I really admire Laura Spath for the way she's really, sticking it out, trial and error and achieving success. I mean, she's lost 100 pounds, something like that. And I tend to agree with her that you have to listen to your own body and see what's going on. Is in regard to the pie charts with a keto diet. And I'm no expert, but it just seems, in my opinion, that it's lacking in a adequate supply of protein.
In May of 2018, I was eating veggies, meat, and a lot of macadamia nuts because they're extremely addicting. And I had lost like 20, 25, 30 pounds a month. Like really, by that point, I was down, 50 pounds. And I started having a lot of digestive issues. That's when we started researching Carnivore. We heard Sean Baker on Joe Rogan. And I've joked about this before, but definitely I thought Chris was crazy for thinking that she didn't need vegetables, and figured that, I would give it a try for a week. And at the end of the week, I had a big salad and completely wrecked my system and my stomach. And by that point, I knew that, at least for now, I wasn't going to need veggies. And I had no concept yet that this was going to be the way I was going to eat forever. You know what? I'm feeling so good. Why would I want to ruin this momentum with a cheat day to celebrate, losing weight? That's what I'd always done before. And so, I mean, results are so addicting that I just kept going and decided, as long as I'm still going, I'm still going to keep going and keep it up. So that's where every time I kind of hit a stall, I would adjust something and change and push a little harder and push a little further just to try to keep those results going. I will say though, in the last 6 months, I feel really good. I did have, and I'll talk about this on another post, but I did have, in the last 6 months, I've had one cheat day that not only set me back physically by a month, but it really set me back mentally. And it's one of the main reasons why I just know that I can't have small cheats. And I will do a whole discussion on that. I have no issue staying on track when everybody's around. Thanksgiving Day, family's in town. Of course I'm going to stay strict because people are watching me, and I am an obliger. I want to please people, and I would never let anybody know that I failed or that I cheated. But the minute the family leaves and the kids go to bed and my husband is out working and I'm home by myself on the couch is when all of those feelings of nobody would know. I could get back on track tomorrow, but really maybe actually I'm going out of town. I'm traveling for work this week, and so I could keep this up for 4 days and nobody would really know. I still have bad days. In the last year, I can count on one hand the number of times I've had anything that was non-carnivore, and it's been many months for me. But I still struggle with emotional triggers and emotional cravings. And I still have days like the last 24 hours that are just really hard. I think I was so focused on Thanksgiving, how do I get through Thanksgiving and not cheat, that I planned everything down. I'm really proud of myself. I stayed strict on Thanksgiving. The day after, I had a lot of family in town with everybody else in my house eating things not on plan. It was fine, and I had focused on that. It was that's what I put all my energy into. I'm exhausted. It is hard sometimes just fighting yourself off and making that decision. I feel like I made 1,000 decisions yesterday to say no, and to say no 1,000 times sometimes seems so much harder than just saying yes. But I know that one little yes, one M&M, one scoop of peanut butter would have resulted in at least 24 hours of me eating a lot of junk.
Today we're going to talk about weight loss and what to do when the weight loss slows down. My personal weight loss journey is a very slow one. For weight loss in general, my main thing always was tracking is key. And what I mean by tracking is really tracking everything, every single little thing. May it be just your salt intake, may it be condiments, just anything, even if it is 0 calories, everything has to be tracked. And I do use MyFitnessPal, and I will link it down below. If you want to add me, feel free. I found that as long as I tracked every single thing, I was constantly mindful of how much I'm consuming. My diet is mainly plant-based and whole foods. I am not a vegan. I'm not even a vegetarian. I do consider myself a reducitarian. Let's try it again, that word. Reducitarian. It's a very hard one. It means I'm trying to reduce my animal intake as much as humanly possible. But I do eat everything, just barely ever. That is the big difference. I've been now on this newest weight loss journey for the last about 7 months, since last summer. And I noticed that it's now really down to, it was at about 1 to 1.5 kilos a week that I lost at the beginning of my new journey, if you want so. Now, the last 2 months, ever since New Year's, I would say it is, if at all, about 0.5 kilo to 1 kilo a week. Other conditions that do not allow me to work out the way I would like to. I eat my 1500 calories every day. I sometimes stay below, I sometimes go above, and the more active I am, the more I allow myself. It doesn't mean that I always use them up, but
Alex from the So Psyched channel lost, I believe, over 100 pounds by now, and I have a great deal of admiration. She is a psychologist, and she lives in Austria, I believe, and she's a psychologist, so she talks about the psychological end of things. She's very interesting and intelligent. She took a different approach than Laura Spath by eating, minimizing or reducing her meat and eats everything. And, there again, it's like, know yourself. Laura has a great deal of trouble binge eating, where Alex from So Psyched has, reduced her calories. She's counting calories to the max. So there's different approaches, and there again, know thyself. If you're a binge eater, you have to probably commit to eliminating certain foods, for example. And I'm sure it's easier said than done. I haven't had that great a difficulty changing my diet around as needed. I did gain a bunch of weight from illness, but even with illness, I was able to lose weight. But we all have our weak points. That's the gist of it, is that I by no means got it down pat.
Zum Schluss kommt noch, Sensibilität.
Wunderschön, oh mein Gott. Oh, look at that. And now some brown sugar. Okay.
Jetzt können Sie gerne so
Okay, I just tried it. Oh my god, this is like a fruit cocktail, but in a coffee form. And now I got an orange biscuit to it. Oh my god. I just drank half of mine. Oh my god, it was delicious. So after having had the cloudberry, now we're going to try the blueberry one. And we are definitely going to put some blueberry jam in there as well. And again with the Café Viennese. So with the milk foam on top of it. And it's a lingo, so. Hi guys, we just got home and I can feel I'm getting shaky again. My blood sugar level is dropping again, like an MF. I really hate it. which means even though I took dextrose about half an hour ago, maybe 40 minutes, it did stabilize my blood sugars for this time now. But again, there is too much insulin in my system, and I do not want to risk fainting. That's not fun. So I'm going to eat the last of my pumpkin strudel that is still left, 2 days later, but I don't mind. So it's gonna be nice. I'll show you the last bit that I have today. Okay, just heated it up, so ready to eat. Having some dollops of yogurt with it, with a lot of garlic. Yep.
I by no means want to pick on Alex over this splurge going to this nice coffee barista. It looks like a blast, actually. But it's to outline about how blood glucose and insulin can become really unstable. And glucose is derived from any carbs, coupled with the caffeine. Yeah, it's an extreme example. But when it becomes unstable like that, she's turning to food. This is the whole, in my opinion, part of the carb addiction cycle, because you get so hungry, and that's why I lean a lot heavier on the meat. Again, not to pick on her, but just to use it as a perfect example of what could go wrong. And next, I want to get into some of the science. We have 3 macros. We have protein, fats, and carbs. And of course we need the protein, but fats and carbs is the energy source. And you know what? We do not need one carb to fuel our body, and the science will explain it.
Follow this sort of very simplistic, incorrect model. What you see is that if you simply reduce the calories going in, you'll reduce your weight. And if you increase the calories out, you'll increase the rate. But the entire premise of this sort of calories in, calories out model is completely fictitious, because we know that's not what happens in the body. The body doesn't have some giant vat of calories, right? You can store sugar, you can store fat. It's not some giant vat of calories that's held somewhere in your liver, right? But that's what they all pretend it is. So if you have the entire wrong idea of why this should work, then it's not going to work. What instead is a better model is a 2-compartment model. That is, there are 2 places in the body where you can store food. You've got your fridge and you've got your freezer. Your calories goes into your fridge, and your calories goes out from the fridge, because that's the easiest place it goes. But there's a third thing that you have to consider, and that is how much food goes back and forth between the freezer and the fridge, because that's what we're really interested in. This, the fat, that's the one that's much harder to get to, right? And the question is, what's controlling this? Because that's really the key. And it turns out that the main player is insulin. We know this because insulin inhibits lipolysis, right? What that means is it stops you from getting the fat coming out. That's its job. That's its normal job. So if you have a lot of insulin, right? So normally if you eat a huge meal, your insulin is high, it's going to tell the body to move all the storage in this way. If your insulin is very high, then you can't get the food back out this way. And that's the problem. So if you have a lot of insulin resistance, for example, which keeps your insulin levels very high, it's like that freezer is kind of locked away in the basement behind a locked, steel bar. You can't get at it. So what happens now when you start reducing your calories? If you start reducing your calories in and you can't get at your storage, what your body is simply going to do is reduce the calories out. That's what it does, right? Because it's not going to keep losing weight until you die.
Recently, low-carb diets, intermittent fasting, and even prolonged fasting have become very popular, and they all have something in common. They move you towards entering the state of ketosis. Ketosis is a state where your body is running primarily on fat from your diet or your body. Ketogenesis is when fats are broken down into something called ketones. These ketones, or ketone bodies, are usually thought of as an alternate fuel source, because instead of glucose, ketones are used to power most tissues as well as the brain. What does any of this have to do with ketosis? Well, ketones also have the misfortune of being misunderstood due to how they were discovered. Physicians first noticed ketones in the latter part of the 19th century when they were noticed to be in abundance in the urine of patients in a diabetic coma. It was understood that a vast overproduction of ketones was responsible for the terrible symptoms of something called diabetic ketoacidosis. So, for half a century, ketones were thought to be the very negative product of impaired carbohydrate utilization. Only after technology and analytical techniques improved did we understand that ketone bodies are perfectly normal components of the blood. Even if you're not technically in ketosis, ketone bodies are always present in the blood of a healthy person, and their levels increase the longer you go without food. After an overnight fast, ketone bodies supply 2 to 6% of the body's energy requirements. Freeman, fatty acids are the heart's main source of fuel, although ketone bodies, as well as lactate, can serve as fuel for heart muscle. In fact, heart muscle consumes acetoacetate, a ketone body, in preference to glucose. Despite this, the body still requires some glucose, even when you aren't eating anything. For example, red blood cells can't run off of ketone bodies because they don't have any mitochondria to metabolize them with. But all of the body's glucose needs are met by the fact that the body can make its own glucose. For example, it can make glucose from the glycerol backbone of fat. For this reason, even during prolonged fasting, people will still keep a stable blood glucose level. This also illustrates that there is actually no dietary requirement for carbohydrate. Quite straightforward. Exercise promotes the expression of brain-derived neurotrophic factor through the action of the ketone body, beta-hydroxybutyrate.
Wow, did I ever perk up when I saw this little slide here and him talking about it. And this goes, what's the connection here? Exercise promotes the expression of brain-derived neurotrophic factor, if I'm saying that right, through the action of, listen up, ketone body, B-hydroxybutyrate, if I'm saying everything okay. Here's the connection. I had done, some time ago, I did a video, and it was in regard to fibromyalgia. Okay, anybody with aches and pains and sleep problems and the whole array of fibromyalgia, listen up, because one of the studies I came across had to do with this BDNF. And I'm going to back up a little bit. This was in regard to why do fibromyalgia patients have a high level of substance P? And I would consider it a bit of a red herring, quote, symptom of fibromyalgia because nobody gets tested. It's done with a spinal tap. It's only done in medical studies. Okay, but what is the connection? Growth hormone instructs your body to make IGF-1. And this is needed for every cell in your body. And without that, it affects the brain-derived neurotrophic factor, the BDNF, which in turn spikes the substance P. And here's the whole punchline is the ketones. Let's see, let me start. Exercise promotes the expression of this through the action of ketones. So this is feeding your brain to make these substances. It's a beautiful thing, and it makes me feel like I'm on track. No, I'm not an expert, but getting into ketosis may very well be helping me quite a little bit. And, you know, heads up to fibromyalgia people.
In essence, ketone bodies may be a preferred fuel source for the brain, as they provide more cellular energy per unit of oxygen compared to glucose. Getting more bang for your oxygen through ketosis would be incredibly significant for the development and maintenance of big brains. Some of Dr. Dominic D'Agostino's work revolves around taking advantage of ketosis's efficient usage of oxygen in the cells.
So what happened next to me so Tim Noakes and friend have insulin resistance, hyperinsulinemia despite youth and marathon training. It improved on the high-fat diet. They must develop type 2 diabetes with time if they continue eating a high-carbohydrate diet. So I continued to eat the high-carbohydrate diet for 33 years, and the consequence was obvious. So now we just go a little bit forward, and next year, this is a picture I graduated with a doctorate in medicine, and here's my mother and my father. My father's just been diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, and he's put on the high-carbohydrate diet, and 10 years later, he's dead from the disease. And I watched him die, and there's nothing worse than dying from type 2 diabetes. He had strokes when he died. He could not speak to me. He lost both his legs. And this was a wonderful, wonderful man, a very powerful, charismatic person, an absolutely icon in my country. And I couldn't help him. And so I carry that burden that I could not help him. And much of what I do is because I'm inspired by what he gave to me and the fact that I couldn't pay back to him. So now it turns out that I discovered I've got type 2 diabetes about 7 years ago, and I realized I've got 10 years. 10 years, or else I'm going to be his position. And now 7 years down the line, I'm glad to report that my diabetes is in remission or in reversal, whatever you choose.
You've made a mistake. What do you do then? And what about all the runners you'd been advising, all the athletes, telling them to eat high carbs? You were even producing an energy glucose gel, weren't you?
Correct. Well,
wow.
we engineered it and designed it and so on, and we promoted it for 20 years or so. Yeah.
And so now, how are you explaining this to the running community?
Well, firstly, I had to make sure that I was right. So anyway, I converted to the diet. I said that's the end of carbs for me. It was really easy because that's the diet I was raised on. My parents are from the north of England, and my mother her father was a major exporter of meat from Liverpool to New York. So she'd always raised me on high meat diets. Yeah. So I think I'm a real carnivore. So anyway, I converted, and then I started losing weight immediately. And in 6 weeks, my running had gone back to what I was running when I was 40. So I was 60 then. I'd gone back to where I was at 40. And I mean, it was just astonishing. I've dropped like 2 minutes a kilometer on some runs. And I've always loved this statement. Our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter. And that's what we hear about. This dietary advice is the worst thing that's ever happened in medicine. I don't think there's anything that matches it. And we have to keep fighting. And we have to honor all the people who've said things like this. We can't stop. We have to fight it. When I go home to South Africa and I see the poor people and the way they're eating and their ill health, we have to change that. It's simply genocide. It's a terrible word, but that's the reality. The diets it's just killing populations, and we have to stand up against it.
This also illustrates that there is actually no dietary requirement for carbohydrate.